Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm here as your neighbor, your fellow mom, as an American citizen, an Israeli citizen, a Jewish woman, but most of all, I'm here as a human being. 6 weeks ago, Israelis were just about to celebrate a joyous holiday, Simchat Torah. The weekend of October 7th was supposed to be a very special culmination of the high holidays. Families eating holiday meals together, spending time together, attending festivals. But at 6:30 a.m. that day, the unthinkable happened. Thousands of Hamas-ISIS terrorists breached the borders with Israel and went on a vicious attack of innocent civilians in the towns, kibbutzim, small farm communities, and went on a massacre rampage in the Nova Music Festival, which was attended by people in their 20s, mostly. All this while Hamas indiscriminately bombarded Israel with thousands of rockets. On a Saturday early morning, just think about it, this caught people mostly while they were still in bed, in their pajamas, sleeping in the comforts of their homes. Some people were going to synagogues, some had an early morning workout, or maybe were up having an early coffee. But at the end of by the end of that day of October 7th, 1,400 people, from infants to elderly and all ages in between, were tortured, raped, and killed. Villages and houses were blown up, burned down, and looted. Thousands were injured, hundreds of them in serious condition. I'd like to help you understand the scale of what we're talking about. If this were to happen in the United States, if we looked at the proportions and looked at the equivalence of that, we'd see 52,000 murdered civilians and over 300,000 injured in one day. And if this wasn't horrific enough, the Hamas-ISIS terrorists, after terrorizing the civilians for hours, abducted 240 of them. And in American number terms, we're looking at about 9,000 people. So I just want to make that sink in a little bit. Today, we're here to talk about the hostages who were brutally taken into the tunnels of Gaza in conditions that we can only imagine, from 9-month-old babies to grandparents in their 80s, toddlers, teenagers, men, women, tweens, teenagers, Holocaust survivors, disabled people. Just this week, one woman gave birth to a baby while in captivity. Can you imagine that? We don't even know if the baby is alive with his mother. We don't know anything. It's important to note that the hostages include people from 30 nationalities, and 9 of the hostages are American citizens. One of them, Omer Nutra, which you'll hear about more in a little bit, is from Plainview, New York. And after this massacre, 250,000 Israelis are homeless. They don't have a home to go back to. To date, 42 days after this awful massacre, the International Red Cross has yet to see or get information about the hostages. Some information has come up, but for the vast majority, we do not know whether they are alive, their condition, whether they are treated for injuries that were documented, mostly by Hamas, by the way, who basically GoPro'd these vicious attacks. We don't know if they're together or split up, if mothers are with their babies. We don't know anything. That the Red Cross would remove itself from the responsibility of its stated mission is simply unacceptable. War crimes were committed purposefully and intentionally in a viciousness and barbarity that we have not seen since the Holocaust. And we certainly have not seen it since Israel became an independent state as a homeland for the Jews. The Islamic State terror groups like Hamas have committed attacks on smaller scales in other parts of the world. And the reality is that we are confronted with terror groups that have no regard for human life and even strategically use their own people as human shields. This needs to be a wake-up call for the world. What happened in Israel and this hostage crisis is completely and utterly unacceptable. Sorry. And so we need everyone in the world who is against terrorism to demand that these hostages will be immediately released. And that's why the chants that we hear said all over the world are bring them home now. Bring them home now. Bring them home now. Bring them home now. I just returned from a week in Israel. I felt compelled to go to help the displaced families, whatever's left of them, and to just be present. It was really hard to be away from it all. I volunteered in various initiatives, and one thing that I just did on Wednesday was I went to a kibbutz in central Israel that is now housing the displaced survivors from Kfar Aza. Their small community had approximately 700 people. 63 were murdered, and 19 were taken hostage into Gaza. I was working in the hospital of this, in the hotel restaurant, bussing tables and checking in with the diners to see if they needed anything. And what I saw were just pieces of families. I saw 4-year-old twins that were orphaned. It was so that they were orphaned. Both parents were murdered in their presence. I saw an elderly mother who lost a son and was visiting her grandchildren who survived in a safe room. In between she was going back and forth also to visit her husband who was in rehab because he was seriously injured. But one story that stuck with me, and unfortunately isn't all that atypical, that I wanted to share with you is this one. 3-year-old Avigai was at home with her parents, Madar and Roy, and her big brother Michael, who was 9, and Amaya, who's 6. The family was attacked in their home. The parents were shot. The big brother and sister hid in a closet. They hid there for 14 hours, a 9 and a 6-year-old, until the IDF was able to rescue them. Michael, at some point, he was able to reach his uncle, and he reported that his parents were shot, as well as his baby sister. He thought she was shot too, but it turns out that Avigai, the 3-year-old, ran out of the house and was seen by a neighbor who had just woken up, Avichai Broditz. He saw the little girl fleeing, grabbed her, and brought her into his home to be with his wife and their 3 young children. He instructed them to go to the safe room. He grabbed his weapon, and he ran out, and he had a day full of fighting terrorists. When he managed to get back into his home, he found that his whole family was kidnapped, as well as the neighbor's daughter. They were taken into Gaza. When you walk around here, you'll see chairs for his wife Hagar, their children Ofri, Yuval, and Oriya, as well as Avigai in this table. So let me tell you about this particular type of installation. First of all, it's not an idea that we came up with. We saw this in Israel. We've seen this all over the world. And we decided to do it here. Shabbat is a quintessential Jewish and Israeli experience, whether you celebrate it religiously or just as a weekly family gathering. We have created the Shabbat dinner table to portray what 240 people look like. And the scale, when you see this, I think is overwhelming. And as you'll see when you walk around here, is that no one is anonymous. Each kidnapped person is a world of his or her own. And we hope you can feel that. You may have seen posters like the ones that you'll see around, in our area even, that were taken down or vandalized. I would never even touch a sign of a missing dog, let alone a human. And somehow people who do this frame this as an act of social justice. It is morally reprehensible. Because this is not about politics. There is nothing that can justify terrorism. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. As humans, we must all stand against terrorism. This installation is meant to be experienced by walking around it on both sides. You'll see that there are images of people facing each other, and we'd like you to see it on both sides. We want you to feel what it's like to have your loved ones close by, and also we want you to hold these kidnapped men and women, children and elderly in your hearts, and to think about what it would mean to not have that table filled. What would it mean for you to have a family dinner like the one that hopefully most of us will have now in Thanksgiving and not have your family members there? We also want you to not just feel all the feels, we want you to take action. We all have elected representatives, and we're lucky to have representatives who are also here. Some of them are here tonight who are committed to fighting against terrorism and who are standing by Israel. So please, when you walked in, if you missed it, check the barcodes around the installation. If you do that, it will open up a website and you can find things that you can do, actions you can take today. And you can help bring the hostages home. That is our hope, to bring them home now. Thank you to everyone who helped create this installation.